Welcome back to the High School B'Kiyas program. Today we're doing Yud Tetum and Beis. The outline of today's Gemara includes four main points. First one is all about Abba Shal's opinion, who holds that Miksa Yom Kukulo, as long as someone observes some mourning for a part of the day, it's considered like the whole day. The rabbis who disagree with this, except in one case, when Shabbos is the 8th day of mourning and it's Erev HaRegel, so they say that the person could cut their hair and break Shiva even on Erev Shabbos, because otherwise we wouldn't have any chance before the Regel. Big machlok is about whether we follow Abba Shal and to what degree, whether it's by Shiva or by Shloshim or both. The question we discussed in the second point is where Shloshim come from, the idea of 30 days. It comes from Nazir, and in turn, where does that come from? The idea of 3 days right after the burial, the first 3 days of mourning are the most serious, and if they're 3 days before the Regel, the person can't break Shiva even for the Regel at all. And then the Gemara discusses whether the Regel counts towards Shloshim or not. 5 lines from the top of the Gemara is discussing Abba Shal's opinion. The Brisa just discussed if someone buries the relative right before Yantiv, as long as it's 3 days before Yantiv, the first 3 days are the most serious days. That's what it says in the Mishnah. And it's not la dafka, it's not imprecise, it's actually precise. That's the Mishnah's opinion. It has to be 3 days before in order for the Regel to break the Shiva. We're going to describe an opinion that we follow the halacha on the Chafam and Aleph, that it doesn't even matter as long as there is any time before the Regel of the Shiva, the Regel will come and break it. In any event, the machlok we have between Rav and Rav Sheshet, which is relevant for what we're discussing within Abba Shal, is if a person had an opportunity to cut his hair before the Regel and didn't do so, whether he's allowed to do so afterwards. Rav, and it's the Tanakama on the top of the Brisa that I discussed over here, is if the person buried their mace before the Regel 8 days before, so he had an opportunity after Shiva for Shloshim to begin, and then the Regel would come and break the Shloshim, and this way he would be able to cut his hair before the Regel. And if he didn't do so, the first opinion is, well, he missed his chance and he can't do so even after the Regel until Shloshim is up. And Abba Shal, over here, Abba Shal Omer, Mutter Legalech Achar Regel. He doesn't hold to that prohibition, he doesn't hold like Rav, he holds like Rosh Hashanah, that as long as the Regel came and wiped out the Shloshim, there's no more prohibition to be concerned with. However, this is the important part for what we're going to discuss the rest of this point, which is as follows. Just like 3 days count towards Shiva, and as long as you had 3 days, then comes the Regel and wipes out the rest of Shiva. So too, once there's been 7 days, that's already enough to take away the entire Shloshim, as long as the Regel comes. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. Shiva v'nan shmona. Why do you say it's only 7 days, Abba Shal? Don't you need 8? As we've been describing in the Mishnah, as we've been describing in the beginning of the Amud with the Tanakama. Says the Gemara, you're right. That is, in fact, Abba Shal's opinion, because of Abba Shal, Miksa Yom Kukulo, we consider part of a day like a whole day. The 7th day is counted both as part of Shiva and part of Shloshim. And that's why 7 days of Shiva are sufficient to start Shloshim, because the first part of the 7th day counts as the end of Shiva, and then the middle of the day counts as Shloshim, and then the Regel comes and breaks, and therefore he can cut his hair on Erev Regel. Also, Abba Shal, as we described before, doesn't hold to the fact that if a person doesn't take the opportunity with the broken Shloshim to cut his hair before the Regel, then he becomes forbidden and he can't cut it for the duration of Shloshim after the Regel. He doesn't hold to that prohibition. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Yina Bar Shila, Allah Abba Shal. Rav Chizda says we follow Abba Shal, but Umon Chacham Abba Shal Kishachal Shmini Shalol Liyot B'Shabbos Erev Regel Shemutar L'Gech B'Erev Regel. There is one case when the rabbis agree with Abba Shal, which is when the 8th day of the 8th day of his mourning falls out on Shabbos and it's Erev Regel, well, then we will allow him to cut his hair even on Friday, because otherwise you have no other opportunity. Another statement that shows that we follow the halacha, like Rav Abba Shal, that Rav said, on the 7th day of mourning, once the comforters who are coming to visit him leave, he's allowed to go and bathe because his Shiva is up, because he only needs to mourn into the 7th day. Come on, Abba Shal, that follows Abba Shal, who holds Miksa Yom Kukulo. Amar Rabbi Halach Abba Shal, B'yom Shiva. He says we follow Abishal for Shiva. But everybody agrees that we're lenient when it comes to Shloshim that we do that next Yom Kikulo. However, Rava Amar Alach Abishal b'Yom Shloshim Ein Alach Abishal b'Yom Shiva. We follow his opinion when it comes to Shloshim, meaning it isn't a dispute between Chachamim and Abishal by Yom Shloshim, and we are Mekel by Shloshim. However, when it comes to Shiva, we are not Mekel. No, we follow Abishal both by Shiva and by Shloshim. Because that's the principle that Shmuel gave us, that we always follow the linear opinion when it comes to Avelus questions. Shloshim Yom Nolan. This brings the second point. Where do we know 30 days from? Yal para minazir. The fact that a person is not allowed to cut the hair for all of Shloshim is learned from the word para that's found both by Avelus and by Nazir. The Bnei Aaron, even though it was day of mourning for them, we're not supposed to leave their hair unshorn, meaning they were supposed to cut their hair that day. However, we learn from regular Avelim, they are not allowed to cut their hair from there, and use the language of the Torah, tifro. Ksiv Hasan by the Nazir says, Gedel Peri, yes, our Rosh, he should leave his hair unshorn, uncut, for 30 days. And how do we know the Nazir is 30 days? Just like by Nazir is 30, so too by the Avelus Shloshim. How do we know that in fact that Nazir is 30? The unspecified Nazir is a person takes upon himself is always 30 days. My time on what's the reason? Amar Kra, Kadoshi, the Nazir is considered to have an wholly existent. This is in Gematria. The equation for each letter corresponds to a certain number, adds up to 30 for the word Yeh. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, another Yud is 10, another 5. Altogether, that makes 30. Rav Huna Yeshua says that the first 3 days are more significant than the others, as we said in our Mishnah, on the top of the Amud with the Brisa. And if the third day or the first two are on Erev Regel, the person cannot bathe in hot water until the nighttime, meaning he can't even do so even on Erev Regel, because the first 3 days have to be complete days of mourning. We have another version of this that Rav Nechemia says we heard that Rav Papi and Rav Papa were saying this like Rav Huna B'rei Yeshua, and we follow his opinion as the halach. A different version of this idea is that Rav Papi, Rav Papa, and Rav Huna B'rei Yeshua all sitting together and saying this statement. Abai had the following question from Rabbi. What do we say about whether the regal counts or shloshim or not? I definitely know that when it comes to Shiva is not going to be counted during the regal, because the person doesn't keep the regal on the regal, the Shiva practices, like not bathing and not changing his clothing. Those don't apply on that usually apply in Shiva, don't apply during the regal. Therefore, they don't count towards the regal. He's not practicing Shiva practices. How could they possibly count towards his regal? However, what about Shloshim? What are the practices of Shloshim? Practices of Shloshim are not cutting hair. So let's see. Since anyway he's keeping the practices of Shloshim during the regal, could they count towards the regal count towards Shloshim? Amrulay Ona. Rabbi says they do not count. If the Brisa says if a person buries their relative 2 days before the regal, so the regal does not wipe out the Shiva according to the Mishnah and this Brisa, because it's the first 3 days of intense mourning, so it's not broken. So they still have to complete the rest of Shiva after the regal. 5 more days. We have certain leniencies, for example, they can have work done by other people. You can have servants do for work for him in his house, in private. In Ram and ask Imo. However, the public doesn't need to comfort him any further. Because they only had to comfort him for 7 days of Shiva, and that was done 2 days before the regal, and even 5 days of the regal. They can comfort him during the regal. Anything that's a question of Avelus, you can't practice Avelus during the regal, and therefore comes the regal and wipes it out. But when I meant wipes it out, it means it'll wipe it out if it already began 3 days, or if it doesn't begin 3 days, it's only been 2 days, so then it's going to push off 5 more days until afterwards. But if it's a question of not practices of avails, but rather comforting the mourner, it's a question of Iske Rabbim, what does the community do in a regel mafsiko? That's not interrupted by the regel, and I can continue the days of regular counting Shiva for the days of how long they will mourn, or they will comfort him for. Kivru Shoshu Yom Yuzov Regel, Mona Shiva Acher Haregel. If they buried a relative from the last 3 days of the regel, so in the middle of the regel, but there were 3 days of mourning still on regel, so then that considered 3 days of comforting of the people, and we say like this: for regular Shiva practices, you have to keep full days of 7 days of Shiva afterwards, Mona Shiva Achar Regel. But when it comes to comforting, Arba Yamim Rishonim, Rabbim asking Bo, Shlosh Yamim Achronim, in Rabbim asking Bo, Shkvar Nasko Regel. When it comes to comforting the mourner, that doesn't apply except 4 more days after the regel, because 3 days were already taken care of during the regel. The regel Ololo, the regel counts. What exactly does this phrase come to add? My love, if it does not include on this last case, when we said that there is no Shiva broken by the regel, because the regel started before the Shiva even began, but yet we say it counts for him. What does that mean? It counts for Shloshim. There's a proof that the regel counts towards Shloshim. Says the Gemara, no. Lo Aresha. This is talking about, in fact, where the person started Shiva and Shloshim before he only did 2 days, so it's not broken by the regel, but therefore it obviously can count, the regel can count towards his Shloshim. Therefore, there's no proof from the Brisa that the regel does count towards Shloshim. Anyways, I can prove from another Brisa, regel Olo Lamin Shloshim, the regel could count towards Shloshim. How so? Keta Kivro B'Techila regel. Mona Shiva Achar regel. If they do a burial in the middle of the regel, then they count the Shiva after the regel. However, it's slightly more lenient that they can have other people to work for him during the Shiva. You can have other workers, servants work for him privately in his house. In Raman asking Bo, however, they don't need, the public doesn't need to comfort him after the regel. Shwar Nazwa regel Ololo. And the comforters have already dealt with him during the regel, and the regel counts for him towards Shloshim Tiyufta, because the only case in the Brisa that we're discussing is that there is no Shiva here that started yet, there is Shloshim, and yet Shloshim begins and is counted towards during the regel. Tiyufta is a absolute refutation of Rabbah like Abai. The words for the week are, for the Amud guys, Eitve is he challenged him, Tiyufta is refutation, and the takeaways are that we follow Miksei Yom Kikula like Abba Shalom, and the question if that applies to Shiva and Shloshim, or only one of the two. The sorcerer's Shloshim comes from Nazar, which is self-learned from the Gemara of Yihya, and if it's within 3 days of the burial, then he has to keep the full 3 days, and he can't bathe even an Erev or Regel, and we said Regel doesn't count for Shiva, but does count for Shloshim.